Really good.
Are you getting serious?
You good?
Are you good?
He's looking at you.
Are you really getting serious?
Tony?
Look at me.
Be nice.
Look at me.
Get the off of me!
Shake my hand and we're good. You don't want to be good? Then let's go. We'll go.
Violence, wild scrambles, and a fighting style mirroring a deranged killer, El Cucuy is the perfect name for the vicious monster masquerading as an MMA fighter. Further proof of his abilities in the octagon can be found in pictures of opponents before and after their defeat against the Boogeyman. Don't go searching if you haven't got the stomach for it, I warn you. That said, it comes as no surprise that Ferguson's unpredictable and unorthodox fighting style has made him something of a legend and earned him one of the longest winning streaks in the UFC. However, for all the beautiful, memorable moments Ferguson created in the octagon, his losing streak is fast catching up with his victories, which has left fans wondering what the hell happened to El Cucuy. Born Anthony Armand Ferguson in Oxnard, California, on the 12th of February 1984, Tony's biological father was not in the picture at the time of his birth or afterward, but we do know he was Mexican while his mother Mary was American. Shortly after his birth, Tony's mother married a Scottish American named Armand Ferguson, who adopted the fighter and gave him his surname. By the time Tony was of school age, his family moved to Muskegon County in Michigan, where his stepfather owned and ran a bar. The Scotsman took Tony as his own son and noticed that the boy was growing into a shy and unsociable child. To help young Tony get out of his shell, Ferguson Sr. started introducing him to combat sports, beginning with boxing. Ferguson took his son to a boxing club before introducing the young Tony to other sports like rugby and basketball. By the time Tony got to high school, he had become quite the athlete and had begun showing great prowess in different sports. At Muskegon Catholic Central High School, where he attended, he competed in 3 sports, including wrestling, baseball, and football. As for how good he was, playing as the starting defensive back for the Division VIII State Football Champions of the year 2000 tells you all you need to know. But that's just football. For wrestling, Tony was just as much a prodigy, making the All-State selection 3 times and leaving high school with the 2002 152-pound division championship title. His prowess in multiple sports made it easy for Tony to get admitted into Michigan Central University, where he picked oil and gas as his major. Unfortunately, that wasn't his only attempt at college, as he soon moved to Grand Valley State University and Muskegon Community College over time for different degrees, including nursing at some point. Despite his floundering attempts at sticking to one school or any degree for more than 2 seconds, Tony's athletic prowess continued as he went on to dominate the 165-pound division of the National Wrestling Championship in 2006. Eventually though, Tony failed to complete any degree, likely due to his mother passing sometime during this period. The grief was much to bear, resulting in the fighter withdrawing from college altogether and throwing himself into combat training. With nothing to do but train, life got ordinary pretty fast. This forced El Cucuy to return home to California and work beside his old man at the bar. He soon found another gig as a marketing and sales executive, working that job during the day and tending to his father's bar at night. His decision to return home turned out to be a blessing in disguise. During another night shift at his father's bar, one of the patrons noticed Tony's cauliflower ear and started a conversation about how it happened. The conversation led Tony to disclose his combat sports background and training, which interested the patron, who turned out to be an MMA trainer. The trainer invited Tony to his gym to train alongside other young talents. One random conversation later, the MMA was about to witness one of the most vicious fighters ever. After about a year of training, Ferguson's foray into MMA was underway. He wasted no time turning pro, entering the professional circuit in 2007. At first, he fought under the banner of a few promotions in California, like Total Fighting Alliance and California Extreme Fighting, to name a few. During this time, he created a remarkable 12-3 record, which set him up for an appearance on the famous UFC reality show, The Ultimate Fighter. Ferguson entered the show under UFC heavyweight champ and WWE star Brock Lesnar's team. The California man wasted no time proving how immense he was in the octagon, bagging back-to-back victories to advance to the finals. 4 years after turning pro, El Cucuy debuted for the UFC in his fight with Ramsey Nijem for the final of UFC's The Ultimate Fighter. Ferguson announced his arrival in grand style, putting Nijem to sleep in the first round and bagging the knockout of the night bonus in the process. The boogeyman had come, he was home, and he was down to play. The most defining moment of Tony Ferguson's career came between 2013 and 2019 when he pulled off a mind-blowing 12-fight win streak. This cemented his place as the top fighter in the lightweight division. Even better, these victories didn't come over random newbies, but some of the most recognizable names in the UFC roster. If that's not impressive enough, El Cucuy also walked away from this streak with the Fight of the Night prize on 6 occasions, 3 Performance of the Night awards, and Submission of the Night and Knockout of the Night on one accolade yet was tying Khabib for the second longest win streak in UFC lightweight division history. How do you go from such a mind-bending record to having the most harrowing slump of your career? By the 9th of May 2020, Ferguson's insane win streak was over, no thanks to Justin Gaethje. It was the 4th career defeat for the California man and the end of a successful win record that had spanned 8 years. Ferguson was at the peak of his career at this point and was in contention for the title of the greatest, most popular UFC fighter. So, while this loss was obviously a blow to fans, no one could have predicted that the boogeyman would go on to lose 7 more fights, or not. Khabib, a rival that teetered on the edge but never quite faced Ferguson in the octagon, may have predicted the latter's tragic decline. After UFC 249, when Ferguson was sent home defeated, Khabib revealed in an interview that the American was due for more of the same result. He said, he's gonna come back and someone gonna beat him again. When you take damage like this, you're never gonna be the same. But it wasn't just Khabib that had this sentiment. Joe Rogan echoed much of the same on his podcast, pointing out when Ferguson's decline began. He said, well, it really started out with him hurting his knee. Then, he came back after that and beat Pettis, which was pretty extraordinary. But then when he had that Gaethje fight, the Gaethje fight was rough. Against Gaethje, there were signs. For one, the American took heavy shots. Also, despite his flash knockdown in the first round, Gaethje looked the more dangerous of the two for the rest of the fight. The proof of this is the referee ending the bout with minutes left on the clock because Ferguson looked visibly battered. Later reports revealed that he'd shattered his orbital bone. Of course, there were speculations about this loss. Some believe that it had to do with Ferguson cutting weight twice in 2 weeks in the build-up to UFC 249. The sentiment is that this weight cut reduced his shot power and reaction time. If that was the case, we'll never know, but it was the beginning of the end for the California man. Ever since that defeat in 2020, Ferguson has struggled to regain his form. It's been one loss after the other, and all in a concurrent fashion too. Tony's next fights against Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush ended in losses via unanimous decision. After that, he was drawn to face Michael Chandler at UFC 274 and kept up the losing streak. Much like with Gaethje, there were moments of individual brilliance from the boogeyman during his fight with Chandler. In fact, this event sparked a glimmer of hope that Ferguson might be returning to form. Unfortunately, that hope was severely dashed when the second round began, and Chandler put El Cucuy to sleep within minutes. It was the first time in Ferguson's career that he'd lost by knockout. By the end of the bout, he took to Twitter to release a statement claiming that he enjoyed the fight, had a lot of fun, and it felt good to be back and hungry again, before finishing with, "We were just getting started." It's unclear if Ferguson remembered the fight differently on account of being separated from his consciousness by the second round. However, it wasn't also far-fetched for the fighter to believe that he was finding his feet again. Only that wasn't the case. By September 2022, Ferguson was drawn against fellow American Nate Diaz at UFC 279. The draw originally pitted Diaz and Khamzat. However, when the Russian missed the weight limit by more than 7 pounds, Ferguson was pulled in as a replacement. The fight was fairly lackluster and bordered on humor at times because of how out of sync both fighters were in the octagon. In fact, at some point, Ferguson had a small lie down on the mat and Diaz joked around and interacted with the crowd. Both fighters had huge crowd appeal, so this was generally well received, including the parts when things got serious. In the end, despite the camaraderie between the duo, Diaz put Ferguson out of commission with a guillotine choke in the 4th round. That was yet another loss on Ferguson's record, and his winning streak had grown to 5 fights. 2 years prior, even after the defeat against Gaethje, it would have been impossible to predict that Ferguson would go from a peak performer to a shadow of himself. It was more of the same at UFC 291, as Ferguson faced Bobby Green in the lightweight division. This fight drummed up a lot of anticipation amongst the UFC faithful despite Ferguson's previous showing. There was a sense of belief in the air that Green would be the start of Tony's great comeback. Either that, or it was the final chance for him to lose and be considered a closed case. For some moments, it looked like Ferguson was clawing his way back to a comeback. He had the upper hand and Green seemed to be on his back foot. But by the time the bell went, the 40-year-old had been handed his behind once more, caught under Green's hold and refusing to tap out until he passed out. Since Green, Ferguson has picked up 2 more losses to Paddy Pimblett and Michael Chiesa. This has fans wondering, is it time for Tony Ferguson to face reality and bow out before he equals his wins record?